Why does the male body react so dramatically when food disappears for longer than expected? This question has fascinated endocrinologists for decades because testosterone is one of the first hormones to signal that something fundamental has changed. When fasting stretches far beyond the typical overnight window, the body begins interpreting it as a potential survival threat, and male hormonal balance becomes part of the negotiation. This shift doesn't happen abruptly, but slowly unfolds like a coded message written in physiology. Inside the bloodstream, testosterone behaves like a biological currency. When everything is fine, the body spends freely, supporting muscle development, motivation, libido, and metabolic efficiency. But under prolonged fasting, this currency suddenly becomes valuable, and the body no longer invests it the same way. At that point, preserving energy takes priority over producing a hormone as metabolically expensive as testosterone. Meanwhile, enzymes and messenger molecules in the hypothalamus start reshuffling their signals. The pituitary gland, which normally releases luteinizing hormone to stimulate testosterone production, becomes more conservative. It acts as if it is rationing every command, reducing biological orders that demand too much energy. This early reduction can remain invisible to the man fasting, but the hormonal system is already adjusting behind the scenes. By the time the body fully recognizes that fasting is no longer a short-term event, testosterone enters a different phase of behavior, one in which every molecule begins to reflect the body's shifting priorities. And this is just the beginning of what prolonged fasting can change. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, do you believe long fasting boosts testosterone? Yes or no? I'm curious to see what you think. Scientific studies on prolonged fasting reveal a fascinating paradox. Short fasting windows may improve hormonal sensitivity, but long fasting windows tend to do the opposite. Research on caloric restriction, multi-day fasts, and energy deprivation consistently shows that testosterone decreases when fasting extends beyond the threshold where the body feels comfortable. This threshold varies by individual, but the downward trend is remarkably consistent across controlled experiments. What makes this especially interesting is how predictable the decline becomes. Clinical studies examining men undergoing religious fasts, medical fasts, and survival simulations show reductions in total and free testosterone when fasting reaches extended durations. The body, in effect, starts prioritizing survival mechanisms, reducing reproductive hormones because they are not essential for staying alive in the moment. Evolution built this hierarchy long before modern research confirmed it. Even more revealing is the hormonal chain reaction that accompanies this decline. When insulin drops and glycogen stores begin to deplete, signaling molecules such as leptin and IGF-1 fall as well. These molecules play vital roles in testosterone regulation, and science has repeatedly shown that reductions in them correspond to reduced androgen production. Each shift forms a piece of a larger puzzle showing how the male body defends itself during caloric scarcity. Across different scientific disciplines, endocrinology, metabolism, nutritional physiology, the conclusions align. Prolonged fasting places testosterone in a secondary position, not because it is unimportant, but because it is costly to maintain when energy is limited. This is the body's long-standing survival protocol at work. During the initial hours of fasting, testosterone remains relatively stable. The body is still relying on stored glycogen and does not perceive a major threat. This early stage feels normal. Energy is steady, mental focus may increase, and blood sugar regulation becomes more efficient. It's a period when the body gently shifts into metabolic flexibility without compromising hormonal function. As the fast continues, the body begins switching energy sources. Liver glycogen decreases, prompting subtle physiological recalibrations. This is when adrenaline and noradrenaline start rising slightly, not as stress signals, but as metabolic accelerators. Interestingly, this phase may cause a mild increase in alertness because the brain is preparing for the possibility of food scarcity. Testosterone, for now, remains protected. However, as insulin levels drop further, a deeper biochemical conversation begins. Lower insulin levels influence the Leydig cells in the testes, reducing their responsiveness to luteinizing hormone. This effect is small at first, but it marks the very start of a hormonal trajectory that becomes more pronounced in prolonged fasting. The body is conserving resources even if the man doesn't feel any major difference yet. By the end of this early fasting window, the body transitions from gentle adaptation to strategic reallocation. Hormones are being prioritized based on biological necessity. Testosterone has not yet fallen significantly, but the setup for its eventual decline has already begun in the background. When fasting continues beyond the window the body perceives as safe, hormonal stability begins to erode. The male endocrine system is highly sensitive to prolonged energy deficits, and testosterone becomes one of the first major hormones to be downregulated. The brain senses reduced nutrient availability and begins lowering reproductive function as a form of metabolic budgeting. At this stage, the decrease in luteinizing hormone becomes more pronounced. This hormone is the primary switch that activates testosterone synthesis, and when its levels fall, the testes reduce production almost immediately. The decline is not random. It is a strategic response designed to protect the body from investing energy it cannot afford to lose. Testosterone synthesis is expensive, and the body knows it. Another element emerges: the shift in thyroid hormone activity. As the fasting window extends, the body reduces conversion of T4 to T3, a move that slows metabolism. A slower metabolism means fewer calories burned, preserving energy, but it also indirectly suppresses testosterone. Both systems are tightly connected. This is one of the clearest signs that the body has stepped into a deeper metabolic conservation mode. Now, the decline in testosterone becomes more noticeable. Fatigue begins to creep in, motivation changes, and mood stability may fluctuate. These symptoms are not just psychological, they reflect a sophisticated hormonal reconfiguration that happens when fasting becomes too long for the male system to maintain equilibrium. Testosterone and energy availability have always been closely intertwined. Producing testosterone requires adequate cholesterol, sufficient caloric intake, and stable metabolic signals. When fasting becomes prolonged, each of these components is disrupted. Cholesterol transportation slows, caloric intake drops to zero, and metabolic messengers begin shifting, all of which weaken testosterone synthesis long before the man feels the full effect.
Body fat also plays a crucial role in hormonal stability. While excess fat can lower testosterone, a complete lack of available energy pushes the endocrine system in the opposite direction. Fat tissue produces leptin, a hormone essential for communicating energy status to the brain. During prolonged fasting, leptin levels drop significantly, and studies show that low leptin reduces the hypothalamus's stimulation of reproductive hormones. The message becomes clear: energy is scarce, reproduction must pause. Additionally, prolonged fasting affects the aromatase activity found in fat tissue. Aromatase is responsible for converting testosterone into estradiol, and when body fat decreases rapidly, this conversion rate drops. Surprisingly, this does not lead to higher testosterone, but instead signals metabolic imbalance. The system loses its normal rhythm, creating hormonal irregularities that reinforce the decline in testosterone. By this point, the connection between energy deprivation and testosterone suppression becomes undeniable. The male body is not malfunctioning, it is protecting itself. And understanding this relationship is essential for anyone considering extended fasting without scientific guidance. When fasting becomes prolonged, metabolic stress intensifies and the testes begin operating under a different biochemical environment. They face lower nutrient availability, reduced insulin signaling, and diminished blood flow, all of which disrupt the cellular machinery responsible for testosterone synthesis. Leydig cells, normally efficient in producing and releasing testosterone, become less responsive as energy scarcity deepens. This metabolic stress triggers a survival-oriented shift in the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. The brain interprets the lack of nutrients as a signal that reproduction and muscle building must be deprioritized. As a result, luteinizing hormone pulses weaken, directly decreasing the testes' ability to maintain healthy testosterone levels. It's a calculated move, not a malfunction, designed to conserve resources in a biologically uncertain environment. Over time, this stress also affects mitochondrial function inside the testes. Since mitochondria are essential for converting cholesterol into testosterone, any disruption in their performance leads to measurable declines in hormone output. The decline becomes a reflection of metabolic urgency rather than hormonal failure, demonstrating just how deeply energy availability controls male biology. Autophagy, often celebrated for its anti-aging and cellular cleansing benefits, plays a more complex role during prolonged fasting. While it enhances cellular repair and removes damaged components, it also signals that the body has shifted into a conservation mode. This cellular housekeeping demands energy, and when energy is limited, the body must reallocate resources away from testosterone production to maintain critical cellular functions. At the testicular level, autophagy can temporarily suppress steroidogenic activity. Cells prioritize survival over performance, adjusting their internal processes so that essential functions continue without unnecessary energy expenditure. This means testosterone synthesis, which relies on a metabolically expensive cascade, becomes one of the first processes to slow down. The body chooses preservation over optimization.
Interestingly, autophagy also alters the balance of oxidative stress. While it reduces accumulated damage, prolonged activation signals that the organism is facing continuous energetic strain. This sustained pressure amplifies the hormonal message that reproduction should pause, reinforcing the decline in testosterone during extended fasting. It's a reminder that biological benefits always depend on context and duration. When fasting stretches far beyond typical cycles, counter-regulatory hormones take the lead. Cortisol rises, adrenaline increases, and glucagon intensifies its signals. These hormones are essential for mobilizing energy, ensuring the body has enough fuel to maintain blood glucose and vital organ function. But as they rise, testosterone faces indirect suppression. Cortisol, in particular, antagonizes testosterone synthesis by diverting resources towards stress response pathways. Adrenaline and noradrenaline also shift metabolic priorities. Their presence elevates alertness and increases fatty acid mobilization, but they simultaneously signal the body to minimize energy use on anabolic, growth-oriented processes. Testosterone, being deeply tied to muscle building, reproduction, and long-term biological investment, does not fit into the immediate survival strategy dictated by these hormones. The combined effect of these counter-regulatory hormones creates a biochemical environment that favors catabolism over anabolism. This is why prolonged fasting elevates stress physiology while reducing reproductive hormones. The endocrine system is not failing, it is executing a highly coordinated survival protocol. Understanding this shift helps explain why longer fasts often produce hormonal outcomes opposite to what many men expect. Prolonged fasting introduces changes in sleep patterns that many men do not anticipate. As glucose availability drops and stress hormones rise, the brain enters a heightened alert state. This state is useful in evolutionary terms. It increases vigilance when food is scarce, but it disrupts the circadian rhythm. Men may find it harder to fall asleep or stay asleep, and this sleep disturbance directly influences testosterone levels, since most testosterone is produced during deep sleep cycles. Circadian rhythm also depends on leptin, insulin, and thyroid hormones, all of which change significantly during extended fasting. These hormones help synchronize internal clocks, and when their levels decrease, timekeeping within the body becomes less precise. Testosterone production, tightly linked to circadian patterns, fluctuates more dramatically as a result. Instead of rising predictably in the early morning, its rhythm becomes irregular.
Additionally, the body shifts melatonin secretion when fasting extends beyond comfortable limits. This shift alters nighttime recovery and reduces the efficacy of hormonal restoration. Because testosterone synthesis relies on uninterrupted sleep architecture, any disturbance in circadian biology compounds the decline triggered by fasting itself. It becomes clear that hormonal health depends as much on timing and rhythm as it does on nutrition. As prolonged fasting continues, the body begins breaking down muscle tissue to supply amino acids for essential metabolic processes. This shift is not immediate, but once glycogen is depleted and fat oxidation no longer fully meets the body's demands, muscle becomes the next available source of fuel. The loss of muscle mass directly impacts testosterone levels because muscle is both a consumer and regulator of androgen activity. Less muscle means weaker hormonal signaling. The decline in muscle mass also reduces mechanical and metabolic stimuli that normally support testosterone production. Activities such as resistance training depend on muscle fibers that generate hormonal responses through microtears, tension, and neuromuscular stimulation. When fasting extends too long, the body lacks the energy to sustain these processes, leading to lower anabolic signaling and decreased natural testosterone rhythms.
Ultimately, the relationship between muscle mass and testosterone becomes a feedback loop. As testosterone drops, maintaining muscle becomes harder, and as muscle drops, testosterone declines even further. Prolonged fasting accelerates this cycle, creating a hormonal environment centered on preservation rather than growth. Understanding this dynamic is crucial for men who rely on fasting without considering muscular or hormonal consequences. Extended fasting offers powerful benefits when practiced appropriately, but crossing the threshold into excessive duration shifts the experience from therapeutic to biologically stressful. The male endocrine system thrives on balance, and prolonged deprivation disrupts that equilibrium. Testosterone is not simply a casualty of fasting. It becomes a marker indicating when the body has pushed beyond what it perceives as safe. Scientific literature highlights this boundary clearly. Short fasts or intermittent fasting create metabolic benefits such as improved insulin sensitivity and enhanced autophagy. But longer fasts alter hormonal communication, disrupt nutrient-sensing pathways, and activate stress mechanisms that suppress reproductive hormones. It's the difference between stimulating adaptation and triggering conservation mode. Recognizing this thin line empowers men to fast strategically rather than recklessly. Understanding how and when testosterone declines provides a roadmap to avoid unintended hormonal consequences. Fasting should be a tool for metabolic optimization, not an invitation for the body to activate emergency protocols. During prolonged fasting, the body sends subtle warnings that hormonal systems are under strain. Reduced motivation, decreased libido, irritability, and difficulty concentrating often appear before a measurable drop in testosterone is detected. These early signs are the body's way of signaling that energy reserves are insufficient to support both survival functions and hormonal performance. Ignoring these cues amplifies the decline. As fasting stretches further, the symptoms intensify. The endocrine system begins prioritizing essential processes exclusively, maintaining brain function, preserving heart activity, and stabilizing blood glucose. Testosterone synthesis, which demands significant cellular resources, becomes one of the first systems to be scaled down. This shift reflects a well-established biological hierarchy rather than a hormonal malfunction. When the body asks for help, it is revealing its internal stress thresholds. Learning to recognize these markers allows men to break the fast at an appropriate moment, protecting hormonal health while still benefiting from autophagy and metabolic flexibility. Awareness becomes a key element in preventing unnecessary hormonal suppression. Clinical research across nutrition and endocrinology provides strong evidence that extended fasting, especially beyond multiple days, leads to measurable declines in testosterone. Studies involving multi-day water fasts, caloric deprivation experiments, and controlled metabolic chambers all show similar patterns. Luteinizing hormone decreases, free testosterone drops, and the body's anabolic signaling weakens. The suppression is consistent, reproducible, and biologically logical. Interestingly, studies also show that the decline is reversible once proper nutrition is restored. Testosterone levels typically begin to normalize within several days of refeeding, demonstrating that the body prioritizes recovery when energy becomes available again. Still, the depth of the decline during fasting depends on baseline health, body composition, and the length of the restrictive period. These scientific insights highlight a crucial truth. Fasting is a powerful physiological tool that needs boundaries. The body responds intelligently to scarcity, but pushing it too far shifts hormonal outcomes from beneficial to detrimental. Learning from these studies helps men adopt fasting protocols that align with long-term hormonal health rather than compromising it. If this deep dive into the science of fasting is helping you understand your body better, you can support the channel with a super thanks. It truly helps me keep bringing high-quality science content like this. The key to maintaining healthy testosterone during fasting is understanding when to stop. Conscious fasting requires recognizing that the male body thrives under structured challenge, not prolonged deprivation. Testosterone depends on adequate nutrients, stable sleep, balanced stress, and consistent metabolic cues, all of which begin to deteriorate when fasting extends beyond beneficial limits. Respecting these biological boundaries preserves hormonal resilience. A structured fasting plan incorporates intentional refeeding, sufficient dietary fats, and strength training to maintain anabolic signaling. These elements prevent the hormonal crash that occurs when fasting is taken to extremes. Men who fast wisely maintain metabolic flexibility while protecting testosterone, ensuring the process supports vitality rather than undermining it. Conscious fasting transforms the practice into a partnership with biology instead of a battle against it. By avoiding excessive fasting durations, men safeguard not only testosterone, but also mood stability, energy, and long-term health. The body rewards strategic discipline, not extreme deprivation. Understanding this principle allows fasting to remain a powerful tool instead of a hormonal setback. If you enjoyed this explanation and want more science-based videos about men's health, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Your support keeps this channel alive.